So, when we're talking about issues of gender and sexuality, a lot of times, we're really focused on the language and we're focused on representations, but we don't often talk about why those are so important. Um, I'm sure, a lot of times when you think about these things, your initial go to and your instinct is, oh, because you don't want to offend people. Oh, you don't want to hurt people's feelings. That's why this stuff is important. People might get hurt feelings. And it's all about experience and sharing. And a lot of feminism and the history of women's gender and sexuality studies is focused on experience and sharing those things. However, I think this is going to be the module that helps you really draw a lot of these concepts together into that big question of why it matters. Because if you ask almost any feminist activist over time, did you become a feminist so that you wouldn't hurt people's feelings? Most of the time, they're going to say, no, I hurt people's feelings all the time. That's what I do. Um, in fact, what they're going to tell you is more likely, no, I'm trying to keep women from getting killed. I'm trying to get people of color from getting killed. I'm trying to get women access to things like birth control so that they don't get stuck in a situation where they don't have money to feed their children or access to decent health care or be getting stuck in a marriage where the man might be violent. And so I think a lot of the time when we're considering issues of gender and sexuality, we focus on, oh, the PC culture, the offense, but we don't consider the ways in which these have very tangible, real effects. Gender norms have very real physical and mental health effects. Access to healthcare is very important. Socioeconomic status can have a really big impact on that. Race can have a very big impact on that. So when we're talking about identity and we're talking about intersections of identity and why all this matters, really a lot of it is about survival. Who gets to live? Who gets to be healthy? Who gets access to water and shelter? Who gets access to hospitals and decent health care where the physicians actually listen to what they say? I think a lot of what you're going to read and listen to and watch in the next few pages will help really solidify some of those connections for you. You'll notice that the first few pages, I really kind of walk you through everything. There's so much to cover when it comes to healthcare that we really were only able to focus on some primary basic concerns. So we're going to go over the basics, why stuff like this matters. We're going to talk about ecofeminism because I think that is a movement that is really relevant to what we're talking about. And I think people only consider one aspect of feminist movements. There are like so many different kinds of feminist movements. And I think this might give you more of an idea of the variety. As well, we're going to talk about the role of like Chicana feminists and indigenous women in shaping some of these discourses. We're going to talk about reproductive and sexual health, which has been a very key issue within women's gender and sexuality studies. And as we discussed earlier, it's just important in general to know about sexual health, right? So we're going to talk about why that matters and the impacts it can have when we don't educate about sexual health, when we don't address the sexual health of particular communities. Toward the end, when we start getting into more niche subjects, I do have you guys kind of building off of what you've already read from previous chapters to choose what interests you in these particular pages. So the last couple pages are going to be more of that style you're used to with pick an article and read it. But at first, I really want you to be thinking about specific things. So there's a lot more of like these talking head videos from me, a lot more guided reading. So for these first few pages, I do ask that you go through them in the order that I ask you to go through them. And then toward the end, you can start picking whatever it is you want.